Potamasyandana Vajivastushu Akshaya Ratna Baranam Baradis Ananta Koshe Shvakarod Ashanmatim. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maharaj Ambarish gave up all attachment to household affairs, wives, children, friends, and relatives, to the best of powerful elephants, to beautiful chariots, carts, horses, and inexhaustible jewels, and to ornaments, garments, and an inexhaustible treasury. He gave up attachment to all of them, regarding them as temporary and material. Purport. Anashaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha. Material possessions can be accepted as far as they can be used in devotional service. Anukulyena krishnanushilanam. Anukulyasya sankalpaha praktikulyasya varjanam. In preaching, many things considered material are needed. A devotee should not have any attachment for such material involvements as house, wife, children, friends, and cars. Maharaj Ambarish, for example, had all such things, but he was not attached to them. This is the effect of Bhakti Yoga. Bhaktihi pare shanu bhavo viraktir anyatra cha. One who is advanced in devotional service has no attachment for material things, for sense enjoyment, but for preaching, to spread the glories of the Lord, he accepts such things without attachment. Anashaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha. Everything can be used to the extent that it can be engaged in Krishna's service. So we'll offer an invocation. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Vatapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So once again, thank you all for joining this morning, and just like to seek the blessings of the devotees of Adipurusha Prabhu, of Arjuna Prabhu, he may be here, and just of each and every one of you. We can have a nice uplifting discussion this morning, an opportunity to remember Krishna and feel some inspiration in our spiritual life, our spiritual journey. So we shall enter into this discussion. So in this verse, it's being detailed everything that Maharaj Ambarish gave up. everything that he readily renounced. And it's really a portrait of practically everything that we are taught to desire in this world. He has the fancy, enormous palaces, and this is also previous time, so much nicer than anything we've seen actually in this lifetime. And the chariots, which of course is like, our fancy cars in this day and age, and all of his, and even going as far as, his own wealth, they say, inexhaustible treasury, meaning that you could draw and draw and draw from it, and there's still wealth there. And his family, even his wives, his children. So this is very profound to hear of someone of such material wealth, so eagerly giving these things up. And of course, we understand that Maharaj Ambarish, extremely elevated devotee, and he's giving these things up for a higher purpose. It's not dry renunciation. Sometimes we hear about dry renunciation, this idea that we give things up without replacing them with something higher. That's very, very daunting for the spirit soul, because the spirit soul is constitutionally anandamaya, pleasure seeking. That's one of the qualities of the spirit soul. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing unnatural about that. The spirit soul desires pleasure and joy and engagement, but it finds that real nourishment through spirit, right? Speaking the same language, right? Spirit is satisfied by spirit. So we can endlessly try to find satisfaction through material things, but ultimately it won't really quench the thirst of the soul. And it's very interesting, sometimes material pleasures are said to, this is from Bhagavad Gita, are said to be like nectar in the beginning, but like poison in the end. Whereas spiritual joys can sometimes feel like poison in the beginning because it's so foreign to our conditioned nature. But by the end, we spend some time in that space and we feel greatly, greatly nourished and quenched and overjoyed. So it's like nectar in the end. There's a similar quotation that's coming from the Christian tradition. I believe it's considered to be actually a quotation directly from Jesus. And he said that material pleasures, it's like drinking salt water. So it may quench you for a moment, but what it's actually doing is it's just increasing and increasing your thirst, and doesn't really put out the fire, so to speak. And we experience this in this world. So when we hear about Maharaj Ambarish readily giving these things up, and of course there are many other wonderful examples. Dhruva Maharaj, he was desirous of a kingdom, and he prayed and did great austerity, seeking that material end. He did have a material desire, but by Krishna's mercy, he had personal darshan of the Supreme Lord in the forest as he was doing this meditation. And of course, after having that darshan, he couldn't even conceive of wanting what he wanted before, because he was just so satisfied and so pleased by his encounter with the Lord. Of course, Lord Buddha also came from a princely background, and he gave up his whole kingdom as well to achieve enlightenment, to seek enlightenment. We have somewhat more modern examples from our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they were very, very high officials. They had very high government positions and were quite wealthy. And they readily gave this up in order to travel and serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so we see that wealth is something that can be given up for a higher purpose. It can be given up for spiritual wealth. And the beauty of that is that spiritual wealth is so free. It's so freely available. Really, the only thing that stands between us and spiritual wealth is our own conditioned nature and our own aversion to such thing, which, speaking for myself, it can be a very thick wall to try to cross through. But we find that by the mercy of devotees, we get the opportunity to see their joy, even if we have doubts about our ability to feel that joy. We see devotees experiencing great joy in spiritual life. And that really is encouraging, because we see that, okay, it's possible. And when we see them experiencing that joy, we see just how real it is. And it's something that's very, very enlivening. And it's also kind of an example that we can't forget. Sometimes, we may read something in a book and it feels inspiring in that moment, but sometimes it doesn't always stick with us, especially in the early stages, conditioned state. We may read something and be inspired by it in the moment, but it doesn't always form a samskar. It doesn't always form a strong impression in our heart and mind. Although, of course, Srila Prabhupada's books, please don't get me wrong, Srila Prabhupada's books are endlessly potent, and so many devotees, including in my own journey, just reading Srila Prabhupada's book. I read Sri Upanishad, and that just completely formed a deep, deep impression that I could never forget. And that sets our spiritual life in motion. But sometimes on the path, especially even after we already come to identify as aspiring devotees, or if we come to serve within the community, we need reminders. We need reminders of the joy that we're seeking and the joy of devotional service. So to see devotees who day in and day out are doing these services, it's very, very encouraging, and it forms a deep samskar. It's a very personal samskar. So this is a wonderful thing. And sometimes we need to empty our hands in order to accept something. So in the case of someone like Maharaj Ambarish or Lord Buddha, they gave up what they had and emptied their hands so that they could accept from Krishna, that they could accept something higher. Now, it should be mentioned that this is not the only way that this can happen. There are also, as Prabhupada says in his purport here, there are many examples in which we actually accept material things for the betterment of our devotional service and for a higher goal, for the ultimate goal of serving Krishna. And great devotees who have that heart for serving Krishna, they have no hesitation whatsoever in accepting anything, even very, very opulent things, to further their service to Lord Krishna. And the devotee actually wants to use everything in Krishna's service. So many examples of this too. And Srila Prabhupada is an incredible example of this. How if Srila Prabhupada had said, no, I'm a sannyasi, I'm a swami, I can't fly on airplanes, I can't use technology, I can't use a tape recorder, I can't accept material wealth to use in Krishna's service, I can't take donations, we would not have our movement that we have today. So Srila Prabhupada is expert in engaging anything and everything in Krishna's service. And that also includes the gifts of his disciples. This is a wonderful thing to think about. Krishna says, I am the ability in man. So Srila Prabhupada saw also not only material resources coming, but also all of these gifts of his young disciples who were coming. And he expertly channeled all of their gifts into the movement, into, this spreading of the holy name, spreading of Krishna consciousness. So there are so many examples of great souls who accept or keep what's been given by Krishna. They remain in their situation. And so one great example would be Sudama. He accepted what Krishna gave. He wasn't expecting anything. He was very poor Brahmin, friend of Krishna, and then Krishna granted him a very opulent situation, and he accepted that. But he had the heart of using that in Krishna's service. Also, even a nice modern day example is we hear about George Harrison. George Harrison, he was very, very sincerely oriented toward the Krishna consciousness movement, and he wanted to serve. So he asked Srila Prabhupada at some point, should I give up? Should I give up my music career? And he kind of had this idea that he should, shave up and move into the temple and be, Bhakta George. And Srila Prabhupada really spoke against this very, very clearly, just said to him, no, this is not the best way that you can serve. And Srila Prabhupada explained to him that, his circumstance as a very famous musician, even as as an artistically gifted person, and as someone who really has a lot of respect and attention from society at large, that is something that's been given by Krishna. And that's something that he can use to a much greater effect than if he were to seemingly renounce. Sometimes we perform our service by accepting. So this is a great example of that. And of course, George Harrison, he did do so many wonderful services for the Hare Krishna movement by using what was given to him by Krishna, by using his circumstance. So another example is Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And that's a wonderful story that I think about a lot. It's nice to hear. Associate of Lord Chaitanya. He lived in very wealthy, opulent circumstances, and the devotees at the time, some of them felt a little bit judgmental. That he's living in such an opulent way, but everyone says he's a great devotee. And I won't go into the full story, but ultimately what happened is they went to visit him, and the devotees there were sharing pastimes of Krishna. And in hearing the pastime, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he became so ecstatic that he began to exhibit ecstatic symptoms, and he would roll around and he would jump, and he was just in great ecstasy. And in doing that, he was knocking all of his expensive material possessions over, and everything was breaking. And the devotees could then see that, he doesn't care for this at all. He's just accepting the circumstances that Krishna has given him. But his heart is completely absorbed in love of God. So, according to the stage of life that we're in also, we may need to accept or reject different things. And of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he made that very clear, that we should accept what's favorable for our Krishna consciousness and reject what is unfavorable. So that may look different for different people. We shouldn't have kind of a very black and white idea about this. That really, also with the help of advanced devotees, of our guru, we can understand what's appropriate for us to accept and reject according to who we are and according to the circumstances that Krishna has given. But, household life, like for example, that's different. Generally, we see that very advanced devotees who are in the Grihastha ashram, they tend to accept a little bit more than devotees who are in the renounced stages of life, brahmachari or vanaprastha sannyasi. But ultimately, we also carry this understanding that just like Maharaj Ambarish gave everything up, we will also eventually, in some way or another, have to give everything up. And this happens, if not before the time of death, of course, it happens at the time of death. And we try to carry this attitude through our life, that nothing belongs to us. So everything belongs to Krishna. Sri Ishopanishad, I can read. This is a wonderful verse, mantra in Sri Ishopanishad. So that's Ishavashyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita ma gridha kasya sviddanam. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So we may accept different things throughout the course of our lives, according to time, place, and circumstance, but we try to remember that it's all coming from Krishna, and ultimately it all belongs to Krishna, even these bodies. So at that time, at the time of death, of course, we're offering everything. We need to give up the material body. We need to give up even aspects of our material identity. So, like right now I work in a hospital. So I may wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm a hospital chaplain or whatever it is. I go and do this. But these are actually all temporary circumstances. We try to connect them to Dharma as much as we can. But when we become too attached to our post in this material world, or when we become too attached to our position in the community, our position in our family structures, our position in our social circles, this forms attachments that we'll ultimately have to relinquish at the time of death. So, but just like how we try to use our material wealth, whatever it may be, we try to use our material resources in Krishna's service. We also try to use our temporary identity in this world. We try to offer that to Krishna also. Whatever gifts we've been given, however best we can serve, that's coming from Krishna. We try to offer that. But also, just like you can't give up material attachments without seeking spiritual wealth, we also can't really give up our material identity without seeking our spiritual identity. So that's a big part of what we're experiencing in our Krishna conscious life. We're trying to connect more and more deeply with our spiritual identity, whether it's our identity as an aspiring servant, aspiring devotee of Krishna, das, anu, das, that we're eternal servants of Krishna. We understand that that's our ultimate identity. We try to see it more and more. Theoretically, we have that understanding that's given. We try to experience that more and more, spend time around devotees who have that realization. And we try to experience our spiritual self as much as possible. And how do we do that? We do that by engaging in spiritual activity. So we seek our real identity by engaging in activities that touch that real self, that touch our Atma, touch our soul. And Srila Prabhupada has given such a beautiful way of life for us that we can engage in spiritual activities. We can come together with devotees, whether virtually or in person. And it just reminds us of that deep identity. And the spiritual wealth, of course, is the holy name, the ultimate example of our spiritual wealth. Bhaktivinoda Thakur named his book Harinam Chintamani. It's like a jewel. It's a jewel that is more valuable than anything in this world. And something that's nice to ask ourselves from time to time. And it's just, I forget which devotee told me this. I'm really grateful for it because I go back on it a lot and just remember this, that if someone came up to you tomorrow and said, I will give you $1 billion, all you have to do is just stop chanting Hare Krishna. Don't ever chant Hare Krishna again. It would be such a confronting situation for us. And of course, it's a progressive thing, right? Our attachment to the holy name, something that we're aspiring toward. But I think many of us, if we thought long and hard about it, we would not agree. We would not agree to that arrangement. We would continue chanting Hare Krishna. And that just goes to show that the wealth that we receive freely from Lord Chaitanya, freely from Srila Prabhupada, they've opened the storehouse. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they're giving the holy name to people who are not even asking for it. They're not even looking for it. So in this way, we see that the wealth we've been given is immeasurable, absolutely cannot even be compared to anything material. And there's a nice little short story here I just wanted to share. And this is about Sanatan Goswami. There was a poor Brahmin. He was worshiping Lord Shiva to get the greatest benediction. He's seeking the benediction. And Lord Shiva is known to give benedictions very, very freely. So he was praying to Lord Shiva in this way. But Lord Shiva gave him an even higher benediction, and he inspired him, directed him to go see Sri Sanatan Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis. And this Brahmin was a contemporary, living in the same place and time as Sanatan Goswami. So what an incredible benediction. So he went to see him. And when he went to visit Sanatan Goswami, he saw that Sanatan Goswami had a touchstone, had a Chintamani jewel, which is a mystical sort of gem that you can touch it to anything and it will turn that item into gold. So it's incredible. It's, basically a form of endless material wealth. And where was Sanatan Goswami keeping it? Where was he storing it? It was sitting in the garbage pile. He was keeping it in the garbage pile. So the Brahmin was amazed. Oh, I see you have this jewel. This is what I'm meant to receive. And why are you keeping it in the garbage pile? He said, oh, that. Sure, here, take it. And he gave it to him. And that Brahmana was overjoyed. He said, wow, Lord Shiva has granted my benediction, and this wonderful Goswami, he's just freely giving me this touchstone. And he was thrilled, and he went off, thanked him. And then a little while later, he started thinking, why do you think Sanatan Goswami was keeping it in the garbage pile? It must be that he had something even better. I should probably go back and, check that out, because maybe I got shortchanged. Maybe Lord Shiva had something higher for me. So he went back to Sanatan Goswami and he asked him, I get this sense that you have a higher wealth, that there's something beyond what you gave me, because you gave it so freely. And on top of that, before you gave it to me, you were keeping it in your garbage pile. So Srila Sanatan Goswami said, yes, you're right. You're right. I do have something higher. And I can give it to you, but if you want that, you need to do something first. You need to go to the Ganges River, and you need to throw the touchstone in the river. And then come back and I'll give you what I have. So this Brahmin was very sincere, and he went ahead and did that. And he came back to Sanatan Goswami, and then Sanatan Goswami at that moment gave him the Maha Mantra. He gave him the holy name, and he initiated him into the chanting of the holy name. So in that way, we can understand that the spiritual wealth that we've been given is absolutely immeasurable. And we have nothing to lose in spiritual life at all. And whatever is given to us in spiritual life, it's not for the pleasure of our senses. Whatever Krishna is giving, we want to try to engage that in his service, use it to please the senses of the Lord, who is known as Rishikesh, the master of the senses. So we're not the masters of our senses. The Lord is the master of everyone's senses. And we try to please his spiritual senses by offering back what we can give. And it doesn't have to be much. That's another thing that's so wonderful in Bhakti, that it doesn't have to be some great opulent offering. Krishna says, patram pushpam palam toyam, right? Fruit, flower, leaf, or water. So these things are not very expensive. They're not very hard to come by. Anyone can go find these things and offer them with love to Krishna, because the ultimate offering is love. That's what we can give Krishna. Krishna possesses everything, but Krishna is very, very pleased when we offer our love, because we have our free will. We're not robots required to be devotees. We're not robots required to inquire into spirit. We're not robots required to show up in spiritual community and try to serve. So imagine how lovingly pleased Krishna is when people elect to do this of their own free will. So that's what we can give. And for us, we have so much mercy from Srila Prabhupada, from the devotees. All we're really required to do is just kind of show up. And then there's always a devotee, hey, please come serve, do this, and just engaging us in so many ways. So this is really, really a great benediction. And, we find that our spiritual wealth that we receive it can sustain us through so many circumstances. And I think of one friend of mine who I met actually here. I live in Newark, New Jersey, and I met him, and he was experiencing homelessness at that time. He was at that time living, out in the street. And I was chanting japa one day, walking around with my bead bag, and I heard someone shout, "Hari Bol, Hari Bol!" And I looked to him, and I had never met him before. And he said, "Oh, I see you're chanting japa. You're chanting Hare Krishna." And I said, "Yes." And then he said, "So are you doing Harinam? Are you doing Harinam Sankirtan around here?" And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, sometimes we should really do it more." He said, "Definitely do that. It will make Lord Chaitanya so happy. It will make Srila Prabhupada so happy." So anyway, my mind was just blown meeting this devotee. And we later connected more, and he shared with me that, he discovered Krishna consciousness at the library. He spent a lot of time at the library reading different religious books, and by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, Bhagavad Gita as it is was there in the library, and he read it. He was so inspired. And this devotee, he shared that, everything he's gone through, living, without a home, everything he's gone through, he feels that Krishna is with him at every moment. And he's been carried through this whole circumstance, and he's always been happy. He's had difficulties for sure, material difficulties, but he's happy. And he went on to, he did go on to be able to, get some work and get a room. And at first he told me, "Oh, it's weird. It's weird because I was used to depending so much on Krishna, and now I don't feel that way." But then we had this talk about how ultimately whatever we're doing, we're completely depending on Krishna. Krishna is giving us everything we have. If we have a gigantic mansion, we're still fully dependent upon Krishna. We should never have that illusion that it's coming from us. So we talked about that, and that's something that we can always try to remember also, that whatever we're being given, it's coming from Krishna, and Krishna will direct us. Krishna will guide us in whether we need to give certain things up or whether we need to accept things. We try to do that, in the spirit of offering, and whatever little we can offer, we try to do it with as much love as we can. Another thing that came to mind is that, Lord Chaitanya, he appeared here in response to Sri Advaita Acharya's cries, his love. And what was he offering? He was offering tulsi leaves and Ganga water. So it can be something very, very simple, our offerings. It's all in the spirit of it. Just as a great king may offer the most opulent gold and jewels and everything. So in spirit behind this, just going back to the verse of Maharaj Ambarish, that he gave up what he had to move closer to Krishna. So we're always striving to do whatever we need to do to take that next step in our spiritual life. And great devotees give us these examples of whether they accept and remain with their circumstances or whether they make some drastic change. It does happen, but it happens in consultation with Guru, with senior devotees, and with deep prayer about always moving forward toward Krishna. Krishna, I want to please your senses. Whatever I can do to do that, please guide me. And please open the right doors and close the wrong doors. It's another very nice prayer that devotees may wish to pray. And there are so many prayers in that spirit that we find. So this is where we are. And we're inspired by devotees who aren't attached to aren't attached to detachment falsely, and who also aren't attached to what they have. So anyway, I'll stop here, and it would be wonderful to hear any thoughts, questions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dina Bandhu Prabhu. Thank you so much for this class as always. Very sweet and easy to understand, but full of a lot of nectar. What you were sharing at the end made me think, I don't know the exact like where it's from, but I had heard a story about like a devotee that was very poor, and he had heard that he could offer everything in his mind to the Lord, and he like would offer all these opulences. And then I love the part where he like was offering, I think, sticky fried rice or something, and then he like went to check to see if it was hot enough, and he burnt himself. Like, I don't know where that's from, but I remember hearing it, and I just thought that was like the sweetest story, that the Lord is even willing to, if we, again, like you said, if we're offering it with love, he's willing to even offer things that we're just bringing up in our mind. And it just made me think of that story, and it just made me smile.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you. Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Thank you for reminding us of that. That's, yeah, perfect example. Yes.
Haribol, Dina Bandhu.
Haribol, Jamuna Jaya, Hare Krishna. Great to see you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class. I was just thinking the way that Sanatana Goswami kept the Chandamani stone in the trash and kept the holy name inside of himself. It's sad that I feel like I do the opposite. I put the holy name in the trash. Sometimes I don't give it what it's meant, and I keep the material treasures in my heart. And really what the lesson is that we should switch that around, as Sanatana Goswami did. So I was just thinking, such an interesting juxtaposition that we need to do what Sanatana Goswami does, but the culture tells us to do the opposite, to keep the material in the heart and to put the spiritual things in the trash. So they're just really resonating with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very, very profound. I love hearing that, about how, we keep the material things deep within. That's a wonderful realization. Thank you. Yes, so true.
Dina Bandhu Prabhu, Hare Krishna, wonderful class. Thank you very much. I like the point that you made about death, giving up your body. I like how you put it. Leaving your bodies is an act of offering, our ultimate offering to the Lord, not just mere giving up. We're not just giving it up. We're offering it. So there's a receiver. There's Krishna on the other end. So that's very consoling. That's a very I like that concept. I think when I'll be leaving my body, I'll be thinking of that. I'm not giving up. I'm offering it to Krishna. Yes, it's a rental. This body is, like you said, it's not ours. Our bodies belong to Krishna. Everything belongs to Krishna, including these bodies. Yeah, so I like that. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, yesterday we had a phone call from somebody suffering from severe depression. And he was, in humility saying, how unqualified he felt and, useless. And we were praying to Krishna while he was talking about how to respond. And what we offered, I said, it says in the Bible something out, what we really have to offer to the Lord, nothing but filthy rags, I said, it's not that everyone is called upon to do something great for the Lord, but anyone can do even some small thing with great love. And we can say to Krishna, Krishna, I'm really not qualified. I make so many mistakes. I have bad habits. I'm, last night we were listening to the devotee reading Marking Bhagavad Dharma, the prayer that Prabhupada wrote on the Jaladuta. And he said, I have no qualification, I have no knowledge, but I have firm faith in the holy name of the Lord. And if you like, you can make me dance, you know. So we can say to Krishna, I have no qualification to engage people or to speak what I've heard from my spiritual master. But if I offer you, Lord, myself as I am, I offer you myself with everything I've got. Krishna is pleased by that. We do our humble best. It may match some other person's criteria for accomplishment or not. Even in the 12-step meeting, they say compare and despair. And so I said to him, don't think you have to compare yourself to anybody else, but if you just say, Lord, I'm yours. Use me as I like. And then a few hours later, he called, and he was in the hospital, and he said, I found myself speaking to other people here. I felt Krishna just telling me to share the holy name and, you know, encourage them. And I felt like, wow, you know, I'm not useless. I do my best, and Krishna is pleased by that. It's interesting to remember that. Anyway, for what it's worth, that's what we have to share with Glory to Prabhupada.
Thank you, Adi Purusha Prabhu. Absolutely. Reminds me of that song. I heard, you know, the song that you sing sometimes, Adi Purusha Prabhu, right? Lord, I'm available to you.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever we do to kind of step forward into Krishna's service, so valuable.
And Krishna will be pleased. How wonderful is Krishna that he's, no matter who you are, where you are, what your situation is, you know, it's possible to please the Lord. Okay. I offer you myself. I offer you myself, just as I am. I'm wishing it was better, but offering you what I've got. Please accept it, and he will. How wonderful is Krishna?
How wonderful is Krishna? Yes.
Okay, we've got to blast out of here right now. It's 8:02, so we'll go to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Can you say his prayer yet? Okay, we'll do it really quickly.
And, you know, what Adi Purusha Prabhu was just saying also, sometimes we feel so unqualified in our service, but it's so interesting. Krishna knows so much more than we do. Sometimes our feeling of disqualification, the very same thing that we feel is a disqualification can be a qualification. So interesting. One of my colleagues in the hospital the other day, he offers spiritual support to people, and he was saying, he was feeling very insecure and unqualified, and he said, I'm just not a good talker. I can't really speak to people in a very convincing way. I don't have like some people have a kind of like charisma. They can step into a hospital room and really like enliven people. He said, I just kind of feel like I'm just, speaking in a very, very casual, basic way, And then what was so interesting is I met someone later in the hospital who was a kind of very tough guy, like kind of stereotypical tough guy. He was like in a motorcycle group and everything like that. And like very, tough guy. And he was having a very, very hard time, his medical circumstances. And I was talking to him and he said, hey, I met one of your colleagues, and it was the guy who was feeling so insecure. And he said, wow, he's just so down to earth. He's so like, I just felt like I could talk to him for hours. He was so easy to talk to. And so, it's just so interesting. The things that we see as weaknesses quite often, especially in Krishna's service, they're so easily turned into strengths. Just, we're put into the right circumstances. So does anyone have any further thoughts?
Hare Krishna, Dina Bandhu Prabhu.
Yeah.
I had written in the chat, but just on this topic of just giving what we have with Sri Ram Navami coming up on Wednesday, I always think of Shabari. That story really touches my heart so much, and of course we are taught with all these rules and parameters, but really ultimately it's just offering from your heart, even if it's half eaten. But if it's of course you try not to do that, but just the point is just offering everything with love. And so I think your talk also made me really remind me of that story. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you always for your encouragement, Athena. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I always enjoy your classes. Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Prabhu, I'm actually from Malaysia. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, yes, we can hear you. Hare Krishna. You're joining from Malaysia.
Yes, Prabhu.
Are you in Penang or KL?
Yeah, I'm from Penang, and I'm just how to say, I'm just a new beginner. I just accepted Krishna
Yeah.
about a couple of months back, and now I'm attached to saw the Instagram. I got through this channel from Instagram actually. So today I tried to log in, and somehow I was late, and I did a half class. So it's really feel grateful.
Wow. So wonderful. Yeah, we're so grateful that you're joining. Please feel free to join any day. It's every day 7:15. Our time over here. I know it's probably 7:15 p.m. for you, right?
Yeah, same,
Or
it's 12
daylight.
hours.
I don't know. But have you been able to visit the temple in Penang? Temple of Devotion and
Every since this lockdown, I think it was locked down, and now they have activated. So every Sunday I'll go to the temple for Tulasi Puja. I'll start my Tulasi Puja 5:30 a.m. and I'll join the Bhagavatam classes. I'm still new, so I'm still in the path of learning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, we're. I'm also.
My name is Lalita. My name is Lalita.
Hare Krishna, Lalita. Wonderful name. Very Krishna conscious name.
Yeah.
And
what's your name? What's your name?
My name is Dina Bandhu Das. Dina Bandhu Das. Dina Bandhu is a name for Krishna, and Das, servant. Yeah. So
you're from New York, right? You're from New York, right?
Yes, mother. Yes, originally from New York. Yeah, living here in New Jersey. My spiritual master, he sometimes goes to Malaysia. That's how I visited that temple one time in Penang. It's beautiful.
You're talking about the biggest ISKCON temple, right? It is in the mainland. It is not in the island. Yeah, it is at the mainland.
The mainland on the top there.
Yes, you're right. Beautiful Kanaya.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Kanaya. Yeah.
So
thank you, Prabhu. And actually, I'm not sure that just now when you was talking about this chapter, I don't know which canto. I'm not sure. He was conducting the Bhagavatam.
You're wondering which one it was, which chapter? So here, I'll write it here in the chat. We're in 9th canto, chapter 4, text 27.
Oh, okay. Actually, Prabhu, I haven't started anything. I'm just learning.